Hey everyone! Welcome to AITA. I hope you enjoy watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's start story 1 inch. AITA for not staying with my wife during her C-section even after she asked. I don't like the operating room and, at some point of my life, hospital. When my ex-wife had her C-section, she had a complication and hovered between life and death for a long time. It was a horrible experience to feel so helpless. Currently, I deal with this in therapy. Several things have improved, but going into an operating room is a big no-no for me. When my ex had our second child, I was very nervous, and she asked me to wait outside the operating room. When my current wife and I decided to try to have children, I made it very clear that I didn't care what her choice of delivery was, but C-section I would not enter, but that I would stay by her side at all times except for operation. She agreed and eventually became pregnant. She decided in the middle of the pregnancy that it would be a C-section, and I said that was fine, but I remembered my limitation. She understood and invited her mother to take my place. On the day of the surgery, before she had a C-section, she asked me to come in with her because she wanted a moment of our own. I apologized, but that this was my limit and that I couldn't. She said, "Fine, I'll go with my mother then," and had a crying face. I tried talking to her, but to no avail, and my AmITheA kept looking at me disputing. Anyway, I don't think it would have been a hell, because I was very nervous, and it definitely wouldn't have helped at all inside the operating room. Everything went well, and our daughter was born beautiful and healthy. I was already at the exit of the operating room waiting for them, and I didn't leave their side. Later, when we were alone, my wife said that I abandoned her at a vulnerable time and left her alone when she needed me most. I tried talking to her, but she said that now we need to focus on our daughter, but that she was disappointed in me as a partner. Apparently my AmITheA told family members what I did, and I'm being criticized. My wife and I have only talked about the baby, and this has been going on for a week now. AITA. AITA for asking my sister if she's had enough attention. My 30F sister, 36, is pregnant with her second child. Her first child, she didn't find out the sex until she gave birth. This time, she and her husband did but have decided not to tell anyone. We've all respected that. Like, it's their business. They have made a pretty big deal about it, constantly bringing it up and trying to bait people into asking, just so they can smile and say we know, but we're not telling. Annoying, but we avoid it. They recently picked a name. As you can guess, they don't want to tell anyone. Cool, their choice. But once again, there's baiting for people to ask questions. I am also pregnant with my first. We're not finding out the sex until birth, though we have 2 names picked out and have told people if they ask. I had my baby shower last weekend. My sister was there. She baited a few people that didn't know her into asking her what she was having. I ignored it. Then, while opening gifts, I received 2 onesies. One had the name we picked out for a girl, the other with the one for a boy. My aunt explained I could hold on to the other one for if we had a second or donate it. Both are pretty common names. I thought it was so sweet. My sister then said, "Oh, we picked a name too." I already knew what would happen. A few asked what it was. She smirked and said we're not telling. I rolled my eyes and said, "Yeah. We know, have enough attention for now?" She turned red but didn't say anything else. We moved on. My mom later chastised me, saying I shouldn't have called her out like that. Apparently my sister cried after. I pointed out she already had her shower where she could annoy people with all that. She doesn't need to do it with mine. IDA? AITA for using my kids' college accounts for my retirement. I'm confused if I am being a dick, so my friend pointed me here. I have a college account for each kid. They all have like around 50K at the moment. Now my oldest went to trade school, and we used his account to pay for that. It was relatively cheap. My daughter went to a small, cheap community college before she dropped out. She's now married and a stay-at-home mom, so both of the accounts still have a ton of money in them, and the two kids are well established at this point. The oldest makes 6 figures at this point, and my daughter married well off, and if they did divorce, she would get a lot. So I emptied the accounts to use for my retirement. I mentioned it at dinner, and they were pissed, saying they still deserve the money even though it was for college only, and they never put a cent in. They both called me a dick. They asked why I could retire early. I told them the reason. I wasn't going to hide it. They knew money was in the account. It would have came up eventually, if not for them, but asking if they could use the extra for their kids. AITA for telling my husband that he's not my first call in an emergency. I've been with my 41 female husband, 62 male, for almost 22 years, and in those years, he's been incredibly unreliable about answering his cell phone when I call. And just to be clear, I'm not frustrated that he doesn't answer when I just want to tell him something silly that our kid did, or just a regular lunch break chat type of situation. I'm talking situations where I really need to talk to him, and he doesn't answer his phone. One example, I was 6 months pregnant with our youngest child, and while I was at work, I slipped and fell down a flight of stairs. Luckily, I landed on my bottom and everything felt okay. But my doctor sent me to the hospital just for safety. We currently only own one car, which he was in possession of, and so in order to get to the hospital to be checked out, I needed him to take me, but when I called he did not answer his phone. It would ring and then voicemail. I called multiple times, before finally breaking his no texting preference. Back in those days texts cost money, and explained, and he finally called me back. I later found out, from him, that he'd just been having lunch with a mutual friend, and had seen me calling but hadn't wanted to be rude to our friend. Second example, this past summer I got into a car accident while driving his car. There was no insurance information in the car, and while I had our app on my phone, the login for it had expired, and I didn't know it off the top of my head. I called him multiple times, texted multiple times, reached out to his boss, and finally had to give up and accept that I didn't have insurance information, and if the police were called I'd be cited for no insurance. Luckily, the gentleman that backed into me was kind, and didn't insist on calling the police, and understood that he was the one who had backed into me, and offered his insurance information with no argument. 45 minutes later, my husband called me back and explained that he'd been in the bathroom. Situations like this have made me feel like he's unreliable, and I can't depend on him to answer his phone, even though he knows that I won't call repeatedly unless there's a major issue, and I've explained that I think in the future I'll call someone else for help if needed, and then reach out to him after the fact. He informed me that I'm wrong and being unreasonable, and that even his therapist thinks that my position is odd, because anyone I call might not answer their phone. I maintain that as my husband, he should be aware that if I'm calling repeatedly it's an emergency, and that any of the friends that I might call in a similar situation would absolutely answer their phones if I called repeatedly. I'm not sure how to feel about it, but after hearing his therapist thinks it's unreasonable as well, am I being an asshole? AITA, my wife, and I got into a fight over McDonald's milkshakes, and it's now blown out of proportion, so we had plans to go out to dinner tonight. We took 2 cars. One car with my family of 5 plus a nephew, then another car with 2 sisters, an uncle, and a niece. We get to the restaurant, and the wait ends up being 2 hours long, so my wife calls her sisters waiting in the car, and they immediately agree to go back to the rental to eat dinner. The sisters will pick up groceries to make mozzarella cheese tomato basil sandwiches for dinner. I know my kids will not eat that, so I tell the wife I'm going through McDonald's for the kids. The wife calls her sisters to make sure they don't get offended we're going through McDonald's for the kids, and also to ask if we can order the nephew a Big Mac like he wants. Here's where the fight started. I tell my wife not to offer to buy them dinner. I don't want to buy everyone dinner tonight. I'll buy everyone in my van dinner, but they're in the car right behind us. If they want McDonald's, then they can drive through the line. Also, I know they won't pay us for whatever they want because family and we're sharing. I have no problem with sharing either. I've bought the most groceries for everyone, but this instance they're in the car right behind us, so they can get their own food. My wife, of course, asked them if they want anything. Now, my first thought was I didn't want to buy combo meals for everyone, but that didn't happen. They just wanted 2 milkshakes, but at this point I was already upset she asked. I did order the milkshakes on a second ticket. When we got to the window, my wife handed me her CC to pay for the milkshakes. She didn't offer to buy the kids dinner or anything else but just milkshakes. She then proceeded not to talk to me for the rest of the ride home. She doesn't talk to me when we got home. I go to the bedroom for 30 minutes, and when I come back I ask her if she's still mad, and she is. I end up drinking alone on the front patio all night until everyone goes to bed. We did talk for 10 minutes on the patio where she told me I was unreasonable and overly aggressive. Maybe unreasonable BC. The order ended up just being 2 milkshakes for $10, but in no way was an overly aggressive. Stupidest fight in the world, but I'm not apologizing and neither is she. AmITheA. If I told my wife I would fire her? Married 16 years. Met in college, both employed and students, and married before graduating. She became pregnant. I dropped out to work full-time. She continued until around 7 months pregnant. We agreed that she would take care of the kids and be a stay-at-home mom until the kids were old enough to go to school during the day. She has been back to school 4 times for different things each time, and has worked maybe 1 year of the 16 years we've been married. Our youngest has been in school for the past 6 years. I've supported everything she wanted to do. She's had multiple MLM, craft making, and business ventures with friends over this time period, and she doesn't stay with any of them for more than a year. At most, during this same time period, I've upgraded jobs multiple times, finished my bachelor's, and obtained a master's. I went from working barely above minimum wage security to working in tech making over $130K/year. I never stopped supporting her or being there for my family. I remember taking a damn group meeting conference call for a courses team project on Google Hangout while I was at Disney World with the family. The first career jump I had, I went from working a double shift security job to driving 6 hours away to an interview, thinking I was late, but I was actually early because it was in a different time zone. While I've been doing everything I can to build us up, I feel like she's been doing nothing but drag us down. She always says she's going to get a job, but she does nothing at home either. She's supposed to be taking classes now to be a teacher, but she doesn't do jack shit on her school work. I've put up with a lot of this over the years, and I think what finally set me off was she opened up a letter from the state we live in talking about teachers' retirement plans. She subbed maybe 3 times in the last year, and I guess they had her in their system for that. She turned to me and said, "Can you help me figure out what I should do for my retirement plan?" I burst out laughing. Like legit laughing my ass off. I have never cussed at her in my life, but I couldn't help it and I was. "You have to have a fucking job before you can fucking retire." She just looked at me shocked. I kept laughing. She said it wasn't that funny. But to me, that was the funniest goddamn thing I had ever heard. In the end, I want to know if I would be an asshole if I sat her down and we had a conversation that went along like this. Imagine we both worked full-time and made enough money that we could hire a live-in naughty housekeeper chef. I know that'd probably cost a lot, but that'd be pretty cool, right? Now imagine after you got home every day you had someone like that, someone that said that was their job, and you agreed that's what they'd do since that was their job. And the house still looked the same, dirty place it is now, and instead of cooking food they just put some Dino nuggets in the air fryer every day. We'd probably fire them, huh?